Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Apologize that I'm in Florida and Matt's in Texas, and the rest of you are freezing. So we're grateful that you've joined us. The Business Brush Up is a program that Treeland High School started to really help give doctors that are coming out of their dental and residency programs the ability to learn things that are not clinical dentistry. And what we found in our history as a company is that that's often not emphasized enough. And to have some experience from people like us and those that have already gone through your situation you're in now to learn the good and the bad is what the Business Brush Up is all about. So tonight, Dr. Krieger has been very gracious with his time to help us explore really what his life is like after he graduated from dental school and residency, and the financial decisions and changes that he's made to really make himself more financially successful. So he's written a very telling blog and does some great reading and research about things that are important about money and important about decisions you're going to make. And we're going to talk about that tonight. So Dr. Krieger, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Christian, thanks for having me. It's a blast.
Awesome, man. Well, good. Why don't we just start with, why don't you just kind of give us your background, where, how you got into dentistry, why you chose oral surgery as a residency, and just give us a little summary of where you are now.
Absolutely. I actually grew up in Washington State, did my undergraduate work in Spokane, Washington. Actually studied Spanish, believe it or not. Kind of wound up becoming interested in dentistry. Attended UNLV dental school in Las Vegas, and was fortunate enough to work with a really great surgeon there, Jeff Moxley, who kind of put me on the oral surgery track and really inspired me that direction. And went ahead and did residency in Delaware at Christiana Care Hospital. And then following residency, moved back to Las Vegas for 3.5 years, where I was a private practice owner with another partner, and just recently moved to Dallas, Texas. And we kind of get into the details of that, whole journey in a bit. But now I'm here practicing, and my wife and I, Maria, really love Dallas. It's been a great fit for us, and we're excited to be here. But the journey definitely had some speed bumps in it, especially financial ones, and we've shaped a lot of what we do differently now than we were doing in the past. And so it's become a passion of mine to kind of tell that story and continue to work down that journey.
Outstanding. And Maria's a dentist as well.
Yes, my wife Maria is a general dentist. She also went to school at UNLV in Las Vegas and is practicing here in Dallas as well.
Outstanding. So what would you say are your understandings of things now that maybe were misconceptions as a dental student or as a resident when it was involving your financial life? Like, what did you think it was going to be, and what did it really maybe turn out to be as far as life in private practice?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made, that a lot of dental students probably do as well, I didn't worry about money at all in dental school. Spent pretty much what I wanted, went to dinners, went out with friends, had a couple credit cards, everything on the credit cards. And I was under the understanding that I was going to make so much money one day as a dentist that it wouldn't matter. It would be easy to pay back that, credit card debt or whatever it was that I was accruing. I had basically maxed out all my student loans. And then during residency, kind of carried that attitude of, now I was going to make even more money. So, what I spent in residency didn't matter. I let my student loans just accrue interest, didn't make any payments on them. And coming out, I think, obviously dentists do make a good income, but I think most practicing dentists that have started within the last 5 years will attest to the fact that, specialty or no specialty, dentistry is a little different than 30 years ago for some of the attendings or teachers that we kind of looked up to. And it's not as easy now to just come out, set up shop, make a ton of money, and the income is a little bit less. The insurance reimbursement is a little bit less, competition is higher, and so paying back those loans, paying back those credit cards, it has not been as easy as I would have hoped, when I was kind of young and carefree 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And so just kind of, spending without worries is, it'll catch up with you.
That's that. Yeah, that's a common theme. So, would your advice be, there's a lot of dental students on this call. I mean, you mentioned there you kind of maxed out whatever you could take as far as a student loan. Is your advice to not always take the full amount, or is it to take what you need to, but be cautious with how you spend it, or what do you think you would have done differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, loans for the vast majority of dental students are a necessity to get through school. But what you don't need to do, which is what I did, was take the maximum living expenses for things you really don't need. There's a lot of ways you can save money on living with another, dental student, kind of sharing an apartment, and just not living the dentist life when you're a dental student. You don't have to go to the fancy restaurants. You don't have to buy go shopping every weekend. You need to really cut back your expenses and live as minimal as possible, because everything you purchase is that ball is just going to keep rolling, and that snowball is going to get bigger and bigger, especially if you go to a residency and you delay paying those loans back. 8 years later, that $100 dinner you went to with friends is now costing you $700. And so minimizing what you take just to get you through school is great, and really trying to put yourself on a little bit of a budget and be cognizant of what you're spending. It's all, for most people, borrowed money, and so again, that's just going to keep, that interest is going to keep rolling.
You made a good point there about being conscious of where you are. I think that's a mistake that people make in a lot of phases in life, not just as students, even when they're making a lot of money. I have a lot of clients that are very, very well off as far as income, but still don't have a structured plan as far as what their budget is or what they're really spending. They're not really true to themselves. Even when I sit down with them to do a consultation, as much as maybe you are with some of your patients, that they sit in your chair and they say everything's fine, and you look at them and say, no, it's not. And we often have that conversation with our clients, even ones that are on the surface seem to be very affluent, that just don't have a plan. What do you think was the catalyst for you to say, I need to get control of this, and I need to develop a plan to attack my debt and to live, financially more conscious of what I'm doing?
So during residency, I kind of hit the wall financially, and that was my turning point. I remember I had tried a couple of times to get out of credit card debt during residency. I ended up totaling about $22,000 in credit card debt before I graduated residency, and I didn't buy any big purchase. It was just little things here, there, little thing here, there, dinner here, dinner there. And I tried a couple of times to look at, switching to a lower interest card, or switching to this deal or that deal to try to move my problems to somewhere I didn't have to worry about them as much. And I wasn't successful. So in the back of my mind, I knew I had to change. And then I remember at one point having to call my mom to help me make a credit card payment. And I got off the phone and I said, man, I'm 31 years old. I'm a year away from graduating. I'm a surgeon. I'm operating on people's faces day in and day out, and I'm not responsible enough to even balance, a budget or a checkbook. I'm so out of control in this area. So I had that kind of situation going, and then I actually heard a podcast by a guy named Dave Ramsey, and he's one of the many authors. I read a lot of different people, but basically he said, the problem isn't the interest rate. The problem is the guy looking at you in the mirror. And that just resonated with me, that it wasn't any financial specific choice that I had to make. I had to decide, hey, it's me that's buying these things. It's me that's out of control. It's me that lacks the discipline. And once I realized that I was the problem, I was also the person that could be the solution. And I started taking the steps to get control. And I think that kind of breakdown of having to call your mom to help pay your credit card bill as a doctor is a eye opener.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I can tell you that my mom always appreciates a phone call, but maybe that one she didn't want to hear. Well, it is interesting because there is a lot of different reading and things out there, and in our side of the world, with financial management and even in managing assets and other things, the most successful clients that we have are ones that have discipline in any stage of their life with their money and with their habits. And no matter who you read, that's going to be a constant theme of creating good habits, creating a pattern. Even with Jeff Weary and Josh Miller, the guys that write a lot of our financial plans for our firm, that's a consistent theme of consistent savings, of setting a goal and getting to that point, but doing it periodically. You can't do it all at once. You can't tackle the whole thing in one bite. You can't get rid of all your student loans, which you've talked about, in one check. You have to do it little by little by little. So the same way that the debt accrued is the same way the debt's going to get deleted. And same with wealth. You have to grow it slowly. And dentistry is, although a fantastic career as far as consistent earnings and consistent income, there's no get rich quick. And the farther you put yourself behind, the slower the rich comes. So that's something that we obviously we see a lot, not just in dental students and residents, but even those in private practice that maybe unfortunately never saw the light to stop that pattern of behavior and then carry on in a better way.
I think sorry, you hit it on the head with I just want to reiterate, you mentioned having a plan, and one of the biggest things that my wife and I have learned, we're not financial experts, we're not rich, we're just on this journey trying to take a step each day toward where we want to be. But the difference for us now from where I was 5 years ago is we have a plan, and we're disciplined to stick to it. And everybody's plan isn't the same, but you need to have one. So you're going towards somewhere each day.
Right. Absolutely. And our same with all of our clients too. Some of our clients say, I want to get rid of all my student loans as fast as possible. I don't care if I've got low interest rates. I just want to get this debt off my plate and get rid of it. Some say, give me to a spot where I can manage my debt, but then still be able to take calculated financial risks with either owning a business or buying out a practice or, moving to a new city and starting a new opportunity, whatever it may be. But everyone, like you said, is going to be a little bit different. But without that plan or without that foresight of saying this is really what I want and this is what's going to make me comfortable financially, then you're just working day to day. And working day to day is a hard grind, because there's, like you said, if there's not a goal, if there's not a vision as far as what you really want, it's going to be tough to accomplish any goal because you don't have one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, gentlemen.
Yes.
How long should we work as an associate before starting to look for buying a practice?
So for me, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience and how that's kind of shaped how I think. And again, everybody's situation is different. I opened a practice right out of residency. I took out a pretty hefty loan to do it. And it was a very, very stressful experience for me. I ended up leaving that practice. The practice is doing well, and I'm happy for the docs there. They're great surgeons. But for me, it was very stressful managing a large amount of practice debt on top of everything else I was trying to deal with. And in my opinion, which may be different than other people's opinions, I don't know that there's a specific timeline in terms of years. There's two things that you're going to look at in an associateship. You're going to look at your skills. How quick can you get to a point where you're confident in running your own office from a skill set standpoint? Meaning you can keep up with the work and work at a level of quality that's fast enough to generate profit. And that's going to depend on are you a general dentist? Are you a periodontist, orthodontist? All those things are going to differ in that respect. And then in terms of finances, how much student debt do you have, and how many other things do you have on your plate? If you've got $400,000 in student debt, you have a big home mortgage, a car loan, 6 credit cards, I probably wouldn't say that that's the best time to open a practice. I'm not going to tell you that you have to pay off all your student loans before you open a practice, but I think if you're trying to do 6 things at once, you're not going to have enough power to do anyone well. If you've got those student loans down to, like Krisha said, to a manageable level, and you can chunk aside, enough money to get your practice rolling, then that's a different situation than you trying to put down the minimal amount of money and spread over 8 things that you're trying to pay at once. That is when you get yourself into a lot of trouble and a lot of stress. And dentistry isn't enjoyable when you're doing that and you're practicing in that way. So I think if you can focus on 1 or 2 things from a financial standpoint, if you're in the position you can do that, then you might be in the position to start your own office. The last thing I'll add quickly to that, everybody, including myself, wants to come out and build the Taj Mahal, the 8-op practice and 5,000 square feet, and you need the newest equipment and you need all these things. I don't think in every situation that's the best choice. I think starting small as possible, used equipment, small facility, you can always move up, but you'll be paying a lot of money and a lot of interest for things you're not using if you start big at the beginning. I do want to own my own practice again, and one of the things that I'm working on now is looking for a small way to start, that I'm not so burdened with a big chunk at the beginning.
Yeah, that's great. And to piggyback on your point about the timeline, everybody's timeline is different. But what I will tell you about what needs to be present whenever you're going to go to buy that practice or to start your own, from our side of it and a lot of the bank side of it too, is they want to see cash. Having even that associateship where you're making some money, whether you're working corporately or you're working for somebody else in private practice or whatever it may be, having cash on your hand is going to be a big factor to make that move. You're going to need flexibility of your money to be able to maybe move to a new city, maybe to put a down payment on certain things, real estate, whatever. But to give you an example, if your student loans are $300,000 and you, let's say in your associateship at the end of the year, however it would work, maybe they give you an extra $50,000 of revenue towards your production, and you take that $50,000 and you pay your student loans down from $300 to $250. That's great that you did that, but a lot of banks are going to say, you know what, just keep paying your student loans down in order, but put that $50,000 in cash, and you're a more attractive candidate to be able to qualify for a loan to buy or start a practice too. So I think it has to be a combination of, like Matt said, knowing where you are, knowing what you need to tackle to get the bad debt out of the way. And the bad debts are credit card debts. Like student loan debt, although it's very high, isn't traditionally a bad debt. You spent that money per se to be in the position you're in, to be a dentist, to be a specialist, to be a doctor in a spot where others can't be. So that's good. That's good debt. Bad debt is the credit card debt, maybe the expensive car, the things that aren't going to make you money. And that's something that we try to coach our clients through too, is that if you can live like a student, and hopefully a smart student throughout residency and dental school for 2 or 3 years after you've graduated, saving some cash, showing that you can control your debt and get things in good order, you're going to be a fantastic candidate for private practice. The dentistry side, you're going to be well trained in, and you're going to learn a lot of that, hand speed and all the things that are going to come from that clinically. That it's not my world, but that stuff in combination with the financial acumen is going to be critical to be able to make that jump and to get yourself in the right spot.
I have another question that kind of goes along with this, gentleman. It says, hi, I'm a D2. I'm in a situation where I have extra money, roughly $8,000, that I don't necessarily need. Question is, should I use that money to pay back on loans or save it to put towards tuition next year so that I don't have to take out another loan, assuming loan rates will continue to go up each year?
I mean, on the surface, mathematically, your question makes sense to hold on to that money, right? If you anticipate the interest rates are going to go up, then having the cash to not have to borrow to then spend at a higher rate, to me, would be sensical to say, I don't need to necessarily pay down that other debt right away. I'd rather hold off on taking out more debt because I've got cash available to me. That's a kind of a fundamental answer, but again, it kind of comes down to the personal side of things too, that depending on what the scenario is and what the rates you can get are and what the terms of the loan are, those could be different person to person as far as how you're going to borrow that money.
I would agree, from a mathematical standpoint, hold on to it. Also, I'm not sure how you came up with the money, but if it's something where I don't know if you're working on the side somehow, or I know some people work in dental school, it's tough, but they do. I don't know if that's where it's coming from. If it's something that you're going to have on a reoccurring basis, from a behavioral standpoint too, it's good to say, hey, whatever debt you have, let's try to limit accruing more in the future, and just mentally saying, hey, I'm going to put this towards that next one so I don't have to take out that loan is kind of a mental victory. And again, that discipline and that behavior, that you're not just paying it off, but then turning around the next day and taking it back out again.
That's a great point.
We have some more questions if I can keep asking, gentlemen. OMFS training is extensive. Here in Canada, you're required to go through the 6 years MD, DMD program. Do you think that you would have an easier time paying back your student loans had you chosen to pursue a specialty with a lower amount of years, perio, for example, or gone off the market?
So this is actually a great question that I just wrote about in my blog this week, that discussed, is specializing worth it, and kind of an algorithm to determine from a numbers standpoint when that payoff occurs. When you look at going into a specialty from a financial standpoint, there's other reasons you love it. It's in your family or whatever. But from a numbers standpoint, you're going to look at three things. You're going to look at lost income. So if you didn't go into that specialty and you were working as a general dentist, in this case, 6 years, you want to add up how much money you anticipate making over that 6 years as a general dentist. Now, I don't know how it is in Canada, most oral surgery residencies in the States pay you'll get about a third of what a general dentist would get. But that has to be factored in. Second thing is, if you have student loans, you need to factor in how much interest is going to accrue during that 6-year period. The third thing is, you need to account for any additional tuition costs. Again, in your case, if you were in the States, you wouldn't have additional tuition, you get paid. But that's, anybody, if you're thinking of ortho, you're thinking of perio, prost, you want to look at what you would have made as a dentist during that time, how much of your student loans are going to accrue, how much interest is going to accrue during that time, and what are your additional costs, and then determine how long it will take you to pay that back. On the average numbers for most specialties, and I don't have any research behind this, but in my mind, I want to be able to do it within 5 years. 5 years of graduating residency. So, if you're going to be a periodontist, but it's going to take you 15 years to catch up with your friends that are general dentists, it doesn't really make sense. If you can make those numbers work, depending on what your student loans are, what your added tuition, et cetera, within 5 years, I think it makes sense. But for the average specialty, when you crunch those numbers and the average student loan debt, it's taken people around 5 years. Now that means, though, from the time you graduate dental school, if we say the average specialty is about 3 years, it's taking you 8 years to meet up with about where your general dentist friends are. Now you're going to be earning a higher income, so most people think you're far ahead of them. But from a financial standpoint or an investment standpoint of what you've accumulated in terms of wealth or money, you probably are taking about that long to meet back up with them. So to go back to specifically 6-year program in Canada, I do think it's worth it for a couple of reasons. One, again, I don't know Canada, but you're probably not accruing additional tuition, and you're probably getting paid. That's one of the things that oral surgery is great for that other residencies aren't. You aren't accruing extra expenses. And if oral surgery is similar there to the States, it's typically the highest income earner of any specialty. And so there is a steep reward, even though it comes later. And so I think almost every time, oral surgery is probably going to be worth it.
I'd agree with that. Just knowing who we work with, that's true.
What advice would you give a married dental student that between him and his wife will be approximately $550,000 in student loan debt by the time he graduates?
First thing I'd say is you want to switch spaces, because my wife and I were 700 grand in debt. So I'll take that any day. But it's a real problem, and I feel your pain. My wife and I, when we got married, had $700,000 in student loans. We just got married 2 years ago. We're down to under 500 now. But it's difficult. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is you have to be on the same page with your spouse. You guys have to talk about money together, talk about your student loans, do your finances together, and have a plan together. Because if you want to pay off the loans, or you want to start a practice, or whatever it is you want to do with your money, if he wants to do something else or she wants to do something else, you guys are just going to spin your wheels and you're not going to get anywhere. Because I can tell you the student loan payments are going to be pretty hefty for that amount of debt, and if you aren't on the same page on how to manage them, it really does kind of run your finances. And so my wife and I, we do a budget together every month. We plan where every dollar we spend is going to go. We agree on how much extra we're going to put at the student loans. We agree, right now we are saving a little bit for start kind of our own practice. And so, we're agreeing on how much is going to go towards that. But we do it together, because if we're pulling in opposite directions, we're not going to get anywhere. So being on the same page, I think, is the best thing that you guys can do.
Yeah, I'd echo that too, and not having to go through the burden of the student loans, but being, married and 3 kids and everything else, you have to be on the same page. And to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Krieger said about, paying us all off, the other question that always comes to mind whenever we're doing a financial plan is the risk of, what if something happens to one of you, or both of you is unlikely, but one of you, in the form of an injury or illness or lawsuit or something that were to stop the income stream coming in to then, make these financial plans happen. So Doc, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, just in relation to what you've done, just to hedge against that too.
So, part of understanding money and finances that I've learned, that's new to me, even though we hear about it all the time in dental schools, sometimes you aren't paying attention to those things, but you realize quickly as a husband, or a father, or a practicing doctor, that you need to protect your money, you need to protect yourself just as much as you need to make it. And so there's a number of insurances that are obviously very important, and it shocks me how many times I talk to doctors, especially younger doctors my age, that don't have, a couple of them that I think are very important. My wife and I, we carry 7 types of insurances. There's the usual that most people are always familiar with, home or renters, auto, medical or health, and then we have ID theft insurance, which unfortunately is an issue now. But then there's the 3 big ones that you need to remember as a doctor. And, the first, life insurance. Most people are fairly familiar with life insurance, but that is provided in the event that, something were to happen to me. I know that Maria is taken care of. She has, enough money to live on. If we don't have kids, but hopefully sometime soon, they'll be taken care of. And so that's a really important one. Especially as a doctor, you've worked so long, you've built a nice income. You want to make sure that if you ever, are gone, that your spouse is taken care of. The second one is probably the one that most commonly is had, because you have to have to practice, and that's malpractice. Everybody is somewhat familiar with it, but obviously you want to have a strong malpractice insurance, a strong malpractice carrier, especially oral surgery. You know, you're probably going to get hit with something at some point, and so that's definitely not one to skimp on. And the last one, which I think is the one that's most often overlooked, is disability. Disability insurance is one that people, I think, feel like they don't need, because we came out of school, we're fairly young, we're fairly healthy, and it just doesn't seem like a valid expense, especially when you're not making a lot of money early on. But again, you've spent so much time, energy, studying, building this career, and you need to protect it. Disability insurance is there in the event that you become disabled and are unable to practice dentistry. You can maintain that income, or a good portion of that income, and I just think it's vital. Both my wife and I have it, and I'll be honest, just to speak real, my wife is usually the one that she's like, oh, do we need this much? You know, can we cut back so we can lower our monthly expenses? And I'm always, you know, adamant that we need to keep it. We have a pretty high amount, and I just think it's you never know what's going to happen, and it's just one that you got to have.
Yeah, so. we've seen it, you know, more frequently than we liked, that people don't have as much or any at all, and something happens, and you know, when it happens, it's too late. You can't go back and buy it after something's already gone on. So getting out ahead of that's critical. And there's coverages out there too that'll help you not only replace your income, but also pay off the student loans as well. And a lot of states have additional benefits now to supplement your coverage, so that you have benefits to then, you know, pay your bills every month if you couldn't work, but then also pay off that student loan burden, depending on, you know, what your situation is. And that's something to definitely consider too.
I do have one more question to ask you, gentlemen, for right now at least. What's a reasonable amount of money I should be budgeting per month?
That's a pretty open-ended question. So there's a few factors that go in to budgeting, and I'll just kind of explain how my wife and I do it. So when you're looking at doing a budget, I think the first thing to explain is that I know budgeting carries a negative connotation, and people are like, oh, I don't want to be on a budget because I don't want to feel restricted, or I don't want to not be able to spend money. A budget is not something that tells you what you can't spend your money on. A budget is something that tells you what you can spend your money on. And so, you know, my wife and I have lived on a budget ever since we've been married, and we do a lot of fun things. I mean, we do some traveling, we go to dinner, you know, we aren't, you know, hermits, but we plan in that month in advance, how much money do we want to spend on dinners out? And if it's, you know, $200 or whatever it is, then we go to dinner, and we don't worry about spending anything as long as it's under $200. We get to enjoy that money, we get to enjoy that dinner, but once that $200 is gone, we wait until the next month, you know, to do whatever we're going to do in terms of eating out or whatever it is. So it shouldn't be restrictive. It should be, you know, permission to spend that money. But what you need to look at is, when you're budgeting, you need to look at how much money you have coming in that month, and you need to make a plan for every one of those dollars. So I think one of the hard things as a dental student is you don't really have a monthly income. If you're living on student loans, typically they're going to disperse, at least how they did it at my school was, you know, they disperse it for like a 3-month chunk. And so you have to be even a little bit more disciplined. You got to take that chunk, you got to divide it over 3 months. You got to anticipate all the expenses that you're going to have over 3 months, and then build in things like entertainment, or, you know, whatever it is that you're going to. Now, don't be extravagant like we talked about, but, you know, you're probably going to go grab a cheeseburger at some point or something like that. You want to account for that money and plan for it. But what you don't want to do is let's say you had $10,000 to budget, and you tell yourself, I'm going to only budget $6,000 because I'm going to save $4,000, and so you make a plan for $5,000 or $6,000, and then you just kind of put that other 4,000 off to the side. Well, if you don't have a plan for that, you're going to end up dipping into it, spending it. You're going to get to the end of that 3 months and it's going to be gone. So you don't have to spend all the money, but if you're going to save it, you have a plan. Okay, I'm going to save 2,000. I'm going to move that to a savings account where I'm not going to touch it. So, I can't tell you should only spend 2,000 a month or something like that if you're looking for a set number. But however many dollars you have a plan for every single dollar. And remember that a budget is something that you decide what you're going to spend it on. So just make the plan before you spend the money.
Yeah, I'd echo that too. That having the plan is the kind of the genesis of this whole metamorphosis, really, that Dr. Krieger's gone through with understanding his finances, but then also with our clients and with I think anybody in general human nature, if you don't see it, you don't spend it. So if there's a way, like he was saying, to take that money and move it from that checking account where you see that number every day and every week or every pay period or whatever, that's why so many people use their 401k as a savings tool, because money, you just take out whatever you need every pay period to make your 401k contribution, and the money's just evaporated, but into savings, and you don't see it, so you don't spend it. And if you can do that personally with your own money, in addition to whatever you can put away for a retirement plan or whatever you're going to put away for spending on your student debt to get that number down, if you can build that additional discipline, that one more step to take just a little bit more money and shuffle it over here so that you can't see it and then thus doesn't get spent most of the time, that's really where a lot of our clients can be successful. And it's more of a mental step than it is a physical step. But once you make that mental step, it's gonna be muscle memory to know that that's gonna be there every time.
Quick secondary question that came in about the planning that you're talking about, gentlemen. Would you recommend talking to a financial planner in order to plan your finances after dental school?
Yes, I would. I think, one of the things that I've learned, I read a lot. I'm always reading different financial articles, books, and things. And every time I learn something new, I learn how much I don't know. And so having somebody in your corner that can walk you through something that really most of us know nothing about is critical. You don't learn this stuff in school. You don't learn it in dental school. Most of us don't learn it from our parents. And so, taking advice from your neighbor or the other dentist in the practice is probably not a smart move. It is worth the time and the cost, to have a professional walking alongside you. I would 100% recommend that.
Yeah, obviously we agree with that, being in the profession, but I would also caution you to say that you don't need to spend a gazillion dollars on a financial planner when you first graduate out of school, because your financial problems aren't really that complex. You kind of have to think about it in the scope of all the other things you're going to have to deal with. You're going to need some basic advice. You're going to need a basic plan, but you're not going to need somebody to do estate planning for you. You're not going to need somebody to do massive tax adjustments to your life. It's going to be pretty fundamental. You're going to be an employee of a practice. You're going to be maybe an independent contractor, but at the beginning, your objective should be to build that cash, like Dr. Krieger said, about getting the right type of insurances to protect yourself should something happen to you, coming up with a good plan to attack your student debt, and then really just setting goals for what you want and what you want your life to look like. That shouldn't cost you a lot of money, but there are a lot of financial advisors out there that charge a tremendous amount for very simplistic information. And I think the bigger thing, like he said, is really just having that coach, having somebody. If you have a membership at the gym, I say you'll go when you want to go, but if you're paying a personal trainer, you'll go because you have to go. And that's kind of the same type of thing with financial planning, is that you can do it, you can learn about it, and you can read about it, and you might get some things right. You might go to the gym 2 days a week or once a month or never. But if you have that trainer and you're paying that person to stay on top of you to make the changes in your life that you want to make, you're more likely to be successful. And that's really where just a good advocate for your financial life can be a good investment. Brooke, do you got anything else there as far as questions from the field?
I have another one that just came in. Would you recommend investing your money as a dental student? Any type, Roth, stock, or anything?
As a student, I would probably just caution you from putting a lot of money into traditional retirement vehicles, only for the fact that if you want to get it out, there's going to be potential hurdles as far as penalties and taxes and different things that you may need to pay to get that money in your pocket. For us, we prefer to have that money in cash, even if it's just in stuff that's very simple, like a money market or even a savings account. But just having the liquidity at the beginning of your career is very critical. We think you'll have enough time to be able to save for retirement and those more traditional buzzwords, IRAs, 401ks, et cetera, that you're going to hear as your career evolves. But at the beginning, having the freedom to be able to make decisions with your money in your pocket and make those moves, and also spend the right amount of money to protect yourself, is going to be something that we think should be earlier in the order than saving for retirement. For us, we still believe and always have that your best investment at the very beginning of your career is more dentistry. Eventually, you'll need to do all these other things that people are going to tell you to need to do, but the clients that can find the way to do more dentistry and do it more effectively are going to probably end up making more money, and then thus it makes it easier for us to make them financially successful.
Christian, the one thing kind of about having some cash on hand, and I've learned this firsthand, I recommend that dentists, especially young dentists, try to keep 3 months of expenses stashed away. And you hear that a lot, 3 months, 6 months, you hear different things, but I know from personal experience, the practical reason, and the reason that I suggest 3 months, is when you go to work, let's say you switch jobs, or you're unhappy where you're at, or you get fired, or whatever it is. We have a great field and we have a great income, but you can't just, it's not like you're washing cars and you just go to the next block and go to the car wash and sign up and start work the next day. You've got to get credentialed with insurances at a new location. There's some practices that will bill under other people, which is a whole other thing ethically, but technically it's going to take you 60 to 90 days to start at another practice when you leave one. So if you only have $500 in the bank, you're going to be in a real tough position while you're out of work for 2 months. And your life will be a lot less stressful, especially when you're transitioning out of dental school. If you've got a little 2 to 3 month cushion, and you're not stressed about starting work 24 hours after you graduate because you got all these bills to pay. So if you can keep that cushion and you can continue it through your career, if you're in a spot you don't like, you're starting out, you don't know what you're going to like, what you're not going to like. Are you going to like this corporation, or you're not going to like that corporation? It gives you the freedom to say, you know what, this isn't for me, I found a better opportunity, and you're not trapped as a fear because you don't have any money. Say, I can move, I can go, because I have the money in the bank to do it. And I think that's smart for your family.
Yep, totally agree. Yep.
How much of your income as a new dentist should we allocate to paying off loans versus sending to a retirement account?
So I think, again, Christian will probably have some very wise words on this. In my view, I don't have a set number. He can probably give you a better estimate on that. My biggest thing for dental students is, again, to have a plan. My number is going to be different than your number because my wife and I have a slightly different plan than you might have. But we know what we're doing and we're sticking to it each month versus, we'll kind of see what comes in, and if there's anything left, we'll put a little towards retirement or a little towards student loans. The key is limiting your day-to-day expenses, and then with that extra chunk, you already know what you're going to do before it even hits the bank account.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's really no silver bullet with anything on that answer. It's it's case to case. Just as every patient that walks in and sits in your chair, you're not just going to immediately start doing a root canal on someone just because they sat down. Every case is going to have to be analyzed. You make a treatment plan and move ahead. Same with the financial plan. You're going to have to go through a series of questions with an advisor, find out what your objectives are, find out what your hurdles are, and then establish a system to meet those goals. So I wish there was an easier answer to that question, but there's not. It's really predicated on what your situation is and adjusting along the way too. Your plans are going to change. Business plans change all the time. Lives change all the time. Things happen. So getting yourself to a point where you're able to be nimble when those changes come, I think is also critical to be able to be in that spot as well.
We don't have any more questions right now, gentlemen.
Okay, well, we've gone about 50 minutes. Dr. Krieger, is there anything, any other words of wisdom, anything else you want to put up for the good of the cause?
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing that I was thinking about with that last question. You know, we can kind of end with this unless there's other questions, but one of the best pieces of advice that I can give young doctors is, you know, you've heard the saying, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, and I feel that, and I feel it too, there's a lot of pressure as a doctor to keep up with the Dr. Joneses, so to speak. And if you can just simply, you know, kind of hold off when you come out of school, don't buy the new car, you know, don't buy the fancy house in that elite neighborhood that the other doctor who's been practicing 30 years lives in, you know, don't take the extravagant vacation around the world just yet. You know, you just hold back for a little bit. You don't have to live like a hermit, but if you can limit those big expenses, you're gonna just boost your wealth building, and as you get that ball rolling, you know, it's gonna pay off. It'll pay off years down the road where you're really gonna just have the freedom to practice how you want, do what you want. Just don't get caught in the rat race. You know, the more money you know, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it matters how much money you keep. And I think that's what a lot of us forget. We're high income earners, but I think Christian will tell you, as a group, dentists make a lot of money, but they don't keep a lot of money. And you just go round and around and around in that wheel, and you have nothing to show for it. And so just don't worry about what the Dr. Joneses are doing, especially when you first start out. Have your plan and focus on where you want to go, and don't worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah, and I think that's even harder now for your, you know, I hate to say your generation because I feel like I'm dating myself, but people that have lived on social media and have so much more visible access to maybe what others' lives are like or what they're doing or where they are and the perception of how successful they are compared to what you are is so much more visual and present every single moment of the day. You pick up your phone and it's right there. You know, someone's in Ibiza and having a great time. Well, okay, well, maybe that's not their total life. Maybe they're in so much debt that they don't even know what to deal with it, so they go to Ibiza. But it's something that I think if you can take the doctor's advice on that and live your own life and understand that your path, it's your goals, it's your journey, which is really his message. It's your journey to create financial independence, and you know, hopefully with the right help and the right advisors and the right team, you know, you're going to be very, very, very successful.